That's okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Asian in Focus, and I have someone very, very special. We always talk about how K-pop isn't just about music anymore. It's about the personality, and this Susan Van Seggern, who's been in the business for 20 years, she's one of the reasons why it has become that way.
I wouldn't say that, but thank you.
Okay, Susan, hi. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for agreeing to do this interview.
Yeah, happy to come and be on. Excited.
Yeah, so okay, let's start with your career. You've been in the game for 20 years. And I don't know, your profession isn't so popular in the Philippines. So nobody really grows up and say, oh, I'd like to be a publicist someday. So how did you end up with this career?
Right. Yeah, nobody in America wakes up and goes, they want to be a publicist either. I don't know. It was, so when I was in college, I was supposed to have I did a lot of music event production in college. Okay. I was like on the concert committee, and so I would bring in bands and produce concerts and whatever. And so then between my junior and senior year of college, I was supposed to go to upstate New York, kind of near where I grew up, and work at this summer shed, which was the summer home of the Buffalo Symphony, and then they also had other concerts there, a place called New York State Art Park. And I was gonna have this internship in production, and then like a couple weeks before the end of school, they were like, oh, we're gonna go with somebody else. And I was like, what do you mean? So then I had to scramble to find an internship.
Yeah.
And so I was able to find an internship with the New York Renaissance Festival. I wanted like a real kind of classic summer job where you are outside and whatever. So I was like, oh, the New York Renaissance Festival. So they hired me as a PR intern, and they actually fired the girl who they had hired for the summer too. So it was just like, I don't know, some kind of weird karmic thing. And so that was my first time I ever did PR, and I was kind of like instantly fantastic at it. And I got them more radio coverage than I was supposed to get radio coverage. So I got them more radio giveaways than they'd ever gotten, and I'd gotten them more local media than they'd ever gotten, and they were just like, wow. And I was like, I'm really good at this. I really like this. This is what I'm going to do, which is nice, like going into your senior year of college to kind of have an idea
what you're going
to do afterwards was good. So
okay, so you said that you felt like you were instantly great at what you were doing, and it certainly showed within that. Do you have any kind of special tactic that you used then that you felt like, oh, this is working?
Well, I really like systems and being super organized. I have like 5 planets in Virgo, so that is part of where that comes from, I think. And also my mother is a super organized person. So that is actually a very key thing in PR, is being very, very organized and kind of systematic with how you're doing stuff, and you need to do, certain outreach, a couple weeks before, a month before, longer before, to go with sort of publication lead times. So I think that has been really helpful to me. And then over the years I've been doing PR, I've developed more systems that kind of help me do PR. Like I have a very specific way I do event PR, and I have a very specific way I'll do like cultural item release PR. So whether that's books or records or films, have a way to do that. So it being very organized, I think, is kind of helpful.
Well, you kind of touched on it. So you said that you do event PR, you do celebrity PR, and you were also in political PR. What is the difference between doing a PR for a politician, to a celebrity, to an event?
It's funny because political PR and music PR is actually quite similar, because especially for a presidential campaign, which is what I was on, they're like touring. They're going from city to city to city to talk to people, to build their audience. So it's almost exactly the same as doing music PR for a touring act.
Right.
So when I was working it was Dennis Kucinich in the 2004 election cycle, it was like, oh, this is just like music PR. And I did end up, because of the work I did, I feel like on that campaign we were punching way above our weight, because I was able to get a lot of coverage for him that I might not have been able to get if I hadn't had the music PR experience.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of a different market then.
Yeah, it's still like you still need to get the information to the media, X days or weeks ahead of time. You still need to follow up with the media X days or weeks ahead of time. So it is very much it's political PR, that kind of retail politics especially for a national campaign, is really, really similar to doing music PR.
Okay. Who's your most memorable client so far? That you've
Well,
worked
Dennis
with?
Kucinich was certainly one of them.
Okay.
And then I had an executive in the late aughts whose name was Calvin Ayre, who was I had him on the cover of Forbes. He was one of the early online gambling billionaires. Those are probably my most, I worked with Dougie Fresh. I don't know. I've had a really fun, amazing, exciting career. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. And there are a lot of horror stories about, these musicians. Are they true?
I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. I mean, there was one artist that I had, and I needed her to do all this press, and her makeup was just taking forever. And it was like, come on. And she was not going to do it until her makeup was done, and I'm not going to say who that was. And, when I was working with Tricky, we were doing a big story in Spin, and there was, the journalist was like, it was one of those like hang out with the artist for 2 days kind of stories.
Oh, wow.
So the journalist, we were at this nightclub, and the journalist would come up to me and he'd be like, he's not letting me stay with him. I have to keep chasing him. And I was like, they don't call him Tricky for no reason. And that was actually the night that him and Goldie got into a fight at this famous New York nightclub, and it was like in front of, like, JFK Jr. was there.
Yeah.
And so that got into all the, Page Six type of things. So that was exciting. But he was a great interview, and he was, I would do like, okay, we're gonna do 8 hours of interviews today,
Right?
And he would do them,
Yeah.
He was actually, and then it was funny. One time I had him in the office and Beanie Man in the office, and they both were like wanting to go somewhere, which was like code for they wanted to go smoke pot. So I was able to find a joint. I worked at Island Records, so I was able to find a joint.
Okay.
And I was like, and we had a roof. So I was like, take this, go on the roof, do that, come back, stop trying to escape. And they were like, perfect. And they did it.
It's like babysitting somebody.
Yes, indeed it is.
Okay, so you did work for some major labels, but you've also worked for some boutique labels. Is there a difference?
Bigger labels, they have bigger budgets, but they also have way more politics.
I was gonna ask that, but then sure, you earn more money, but with all the politics that you have to deal with, is it even worth it?
Well, that is why I didn't continue working for major labels now, isn't it? I don't know. I'm not a great political player.
Okay. I'm surprised.
Maybe I'd be better now, but at that time, I was not a good political player, so I was not. I didn't really understand that in order to be successful in the music business, it was more important to be a good political player than actually do your job well.
Right.
That was the kind of like rookie mistake I didn't really kind of figure out until much later in my life.
So what is those are some great experiences, but what would you consider your greatest failure?
I don't necessarily feel like I've had any huge failures. At the time when I had a PR agency, and we started in '97, it was just me and my partner, and then we built up the agency to 12 people. We had an office in New York. We had 3 people in New York. We had 9 people in LA. And then the dot-com crash happened, and then the 9/11 recession happened, and we just got killed. And we were hardly the only people that got killed by the dot-com crash and the 9/11 recession, so I didn't feel like, at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm such a loser. But later, people would say to me, you had your own agency for 6 years? That's amazing. You had offices in New York and LA? That's amazing. So in retrospect, I feel like that was an incredible experience. I'm glad I had it. It taught me one thing, which was that I never want to have an agency again. I don't want rent. I don't want employees.
The overhead.
The stress. The not being able to do PR. Like, that made me more of a business person running a business and having to do business development all the time.
Right.
And I don't mind doing business development, but I also really like doing PR. So
yeah. When you shape a musician's image, how much is it from the PR, the publicist, the PR person, and how much is it the label or the musician himself or herself?
it really depends on how much of a vision that artist has for themselves. You know,
Okay.
some artists come like fully formed, like I want to do this and I'm going to do it this way. And, you know, like David Bowie and Lady Gaga, like there was no label telling them what to do. They were coming up with that themselves. You know, sometimes I think the label will kind of try to help. I mean, it really depends. It really depends on the artist and what their goals are. And what kind of music it is. Like a pop artist is probably going to have a little more label shaping
Yeah.
than a singer-songwriter
Okay.
might have,
Okay.
or a punk band might have.
Yeah. Okay, so can you describe the process? So if a client signs you on, what's the first thing? Like, can you work as much detail as you can?
So I usually start with what I call a period of materials and messaging.
Okay.
So that's where you want to get their bio, their photos, you know, all the materials that you need to work with them. A lot of times, by the time people come to me, they kind of have that stuff, and then I'll just kind of massage it a little bit. Sometimes I'll have to write a bio for a client. You know, usually they come with pictures. Sometimes it'll be like, these pictures are garbage. We have to get a photo shoot done. You know, so then it is like sort of working with the photographer and getting the style that you're looking for. I mean, I've worked with a lot of jazz artists, and I sort of love that kind of like Blue Note mid-century style.
Right.
So I'll often like, you know, especially for jazz, like try to get something in that area. Like I did a photo shoot a million years ago with Ronnie Jordan, who is dead actually, but he was a great British jazz guitar player. So we kind of did him in that sort of Blue Note style, which was really fun. Although even with Calvin, like I did a photo shoot with him at the Stahl House, which is the, you know, mid-century modern. It's that glass box that overlooks the city that you've seen pictures of a million times. So we did a photo shoot there, and that also had that sort of kind of mid-century style, which I like, and I find it's very clean and it's very attractive for a wide variety of people. So that's sort of a style I like. But I mean, you know, you definitely want to work with the artist and what their vibe is and how to bring that up through the pictures and the bio.
Have you ever encountered a client where you felt like whoever you are isn't going to work?
I mean, I've certainly had projects that are really, really, really challenging. And I mean, you know, as I heard John saying earlier, there's so much music right now. I don't know if he said this, but apparently like 100,000 new songs hit Spotify every day.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
So it is really, really, really challenging. So, you know, artists that aren't 100% all in for their careers are hard to work with, because you're like, no, I can't do this by myself. You have to be driving this, you know.
Yeah.
So that can be an issue. Not touring, it's like, are you serious about your career? Because if you're serious about your career, you're touring. If you're not touring, how serious are you? So it is like, sometimes when the artist isn't as serious, it's harder for the PR person.
Okay. Do you ever create controversy events just to get?
I wouldn't say create controversy, but sometimes, you know, like the Goldie and Tricky fight, which maybe that was them trying to create controversy a little bit, I think it was. But, you know, I'm more the kind of person that you call, and obviously I can't mention who my clients are that do this, but I definitely do crisis PR. So sometimes people who are having controversy will call me, and then my job will be to like tamp it down.
Right. Is it true that for some celebrities, it's actually the PR person that calls paparazzis to follow their clients around?
Yeah. There are. I mean, that is a sort of more like celebrity kind of PR that I don't really do that much of. But yeah, I mean, anytime you see like so-and-so playing with her child at the public park, like so-and-so has a jungle gym in their backyard. They don't need to take their kid to a public park where then they can get photographed. Like that was a setup, definitely.
So you can spot one.
Oh yeah.
From a mile away.
Yeah.
So is there any kind of client that you will never ever say yes to?
I mean, I never say never. Like I said earlier, as far as PR people in LA go, there's so many people who are really good at film PR. I wouldn't necessarily hire me for film PR. I mean, I've certainly done film PR. I mean, I'm probably better for docs than I am for narrative features. Similarly, fiction books and me, not so great.
Okay.
I like things that are more, if I'm going to do book PR, I like nonfiction. And that's sort of like celebrity kind of reality. I mean, I developed a TV show called My Cat from Hell. It ran for 11 seasons on Animal Planet, and I did the PR for the first couple seasons, and I did PR for the star before that. And that was sort of a reality show, but I mean, more like, your Real Housewives type people. Like, I'm not working with a Real Housewife.
When you get a celebrity as a client, what is the first thing that you look at? What's the first thing that you do?
Well, you want to just sort of assess like all their socials, like I said, look at their bio, make sure they have great photos, see who's covered them, what kind of things they like to talk about, what their interests are, just really get a good read on that person so that you can explain them to other people.
Right. What if their idea of how they want to package themselves clashes with yours? Who has the last call?
I'm kind of a go along, get along kind of gal. So, and I want to just enhance who people are more than change them.
Okay.
So I'm usually looking to work with the person and like I said, just enhance who they are as opposed to changing them.
Okay. So then some clients actually do, or maybe all of them, need media training.
I mean, some clients don't need media training. Some clients really need media training. It's really about comfort. You know what I mean? Like, you want people to be comfortable when they're being interviewed. And usually what'll happen if somebody really needs media training, they'll be canceling interviews. They won't want to do interviews. And then you have to be like, dude, it's part of the gig. You have to do interviews. So then I want to bring in a media trainer.
Okay. So you don't do the media training itself, somebody else does.
I mean, I will do kind of interview prep, which some consider media training, where I'll be like, okay, this is what the interview's about, and this is, maybe how you should approach these questions. But for somebody who really needs like serious, proper media training, I will tend to bring in an actual
expert. Okay, so can you describe to us what happens in the actual media
training?
training?
So the companies I've worked with will typically work with you and the client on nailing the key messages, because especially for television interviews, you really only have like a very tiny window to get that in there. So you want to answer the questions with your messages. And you see this, like, especially with politicians, where like somebody will ask them a question and then they'll answer completely different. Well, that's interesting, but and then they'll get their message in. Like, that is actually something that you teach people how to do, redirecting. Yeah. So usually what'll happen is you'll work with the media trainer on the messages, and then you'll work with the client on the messages and really getting them in. And then oftentimes the media trainer will have like a camera person, or have a camera at least, and then they'll be like, okay, I'm the journalist, you're the subject, and they'll do like mock interviews, and then you'll watch the mock interviews, and then you'll be like, okay, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, and then you'll do that, for, depends, like, 4 hours, 6 hours, however long you have the media trainer for. And then usually by the end of the day, the client knows their messages and feels more comfortable about giving them. I mean, when I had Calvin, he was doing that, canceling interviews, not doing it, and I was like, all right, he needs to get media trained. And then we actually ended up doing 3 sessions with him, I think. And then he was a monster. He wanted to do every interview he could.
Right. Is there any untrainable client? Or at the very least, do you think there are clients that will never be as good as you would want them to be?
Well, again, it kind of goes back to that, how much do they want it? How into it are they? Like, if they're not into it, maybe they're not going to be that great. You know what I mean? But if they're really into it, they usually figure it out.
All right. Okay. So on the other end of it, how do you build your network? You need a lot of connections, right? That's one thing a PR person needs.
Yeah. So I have been building my database for my whole career, and I have and it's not all up to date because one person cannot keep a 30,000 contact database up to date, but I do have a 30,000 contact database that is mine. And then PR people can get these kind of like cloud database services that you pay a subscription for, that has, pretty much all the journalists you would want in there, so you can always look up whatever journalist you want to get in touch with, and they're usually in at least one of those database services, if not most of the database services. And then, I'm a mom. I live in the Valley. I'm not super going out schmoozing person like I might have been when I was much younger.
Yeah.
So now I think it's kind of like I just, the people I know are the people I know, and if I meet new people, great.
Right.
But I have to say, I've also found that it's really, in my experience, nothing life-changing has ever really happened from meeting one person at a party.
Okay.
Like, that is just, it doesn't really work like that. It's the relationships that you build over years and decades.
Okay.
Like when I sold the TV show, both of those guys I had dated, and then I was still friends with them, very good friends with them after I dated.
Yeah.
And I had known both of those guys since the early 90s. And when I sold that show to them, it was 2008.
Okay.
So, I had known those guys for over 10 years.
Okay.
So that's the kind of like deep relationships that you have with people. I have journalists in my database that I've been talking to for decades.
But at when you were younger, you would go out of
your
way.
When I worked at record labels, I was going to like 2-3 things a night.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, 2-3 things a night, and going out 3 nights a week, going out 4 nights a week, going out, going to 2-3 things a night. Yeah. Back to Calvin. Certainly, and parties. I remember one of those early, not that early, I guess, one of those Coachellas in the mid-aughts.
Yeah.
A friend of mine who was a journalist always had a party like the night before, so it was like the Thursday or the Friday before. I think there were still 2 nights then. And I remember being at one of those parties and then seeing a friend of mine who worked for People and being like, oh my God, I have a bachelor for your best bachelors. He's a billionaire, he's single, online gambling, but he was just on the cover of Forbes. She was like, perfect, let's do it. So that was like a great, like saw her at a party, asked her, did it, ran in People.
So how has PR changed? But because that's 20 years, it's a long.
When I started, we were mailing and faxing, and then we were emailing, and now mostly emailing or texting or social. The basic stuff of I'm trying to get the information in front of the media in a way that makes them want to cover my client has been the through line throughout.
Right.
It's just maybe different how, people don't really do press kits anymore. They have websites,
right,
right. So there it's different, but it's not impossibly different.
Yeah. Okay. The slap. Will Smith.
Oh my God. I remember thinking to myself, thank God I'm not Will Smith's publicist. I would have made him apologize more sincerely sooner.
Okay.
I felt like that was not handled super well.
Mm-hmm.
I might have fired a client. I might have been like, I can't work with you anymore. It's insane. How did you do that? How could you do that to someone? Like, on national television, not just on international television. You know what I mean? Like,
I was really surprised he wasn't arrested. I was like, oh,
Well, I
he's still
think
there.
Chris Rock said not to arrest him, so that's what happened there.
When he received the award for best actor, which he deserved, by the way. He was great in that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I was
still,
like, oh, he's still there. This is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So because you mentioned that you did crisis PR.
Yeah.
So when something like that happens, somebody approaches you, there's a crisis. What's the immediate thing that you do?
Well, it really depends where you're at in the stage of the crisis. If the crisis is something that has happened but the news hasn't hit yet, then you have the opportunity to keep the news from hitting.
Okay.
So that, and as I like to say, the best crisis PR is where you never hear about the crisis at all.
At all.
So that's like my favorite. And then if the crisis is already out, then what you want to do is you want to put other news on top of it.
Right.
So, whether that's creating some news or just using something that you have coming up and getting it out on the wire, and then it pushes down the bad news.
Right, right. In one of your interviews, you said that one of the things that a publicist has to be is a good writer.
Yes.
Okay. Can you survive as a publicist if you're not a good writer?
Yes. If you have other things that make you amazing as a publicist, great journalist relationships, great client relationships, and these days, like, John was saying about AI, like, you can certainly use AI to help you be a better writer.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that it's maybe less important than it used to be, but you still need to be able to tell a story and understand how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's always going to be a skill that is important for
Okay.
PR. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So why would we go for a PR if we can just do paid ads?
Well, it's for the credibility.
Okay.
Like, you have much more credibility, especially for major outlets. Like, if you've been covered in the New York Times or Business Insider or what have you, then it's them saying, oh, you're great.
Okay.
As opposed to you saying, if you buy an ad, you're just saying you're great. But if the New York Times says you're great, then it's the New York Times saying you're right.
Okay. So one of the things that when I started working with some PR people, one of the things when I was very young at the time, so I was surprised when they told me that a PR person won't actually guarantee results.
No.
Okay. So my first question was then, so why will I even try if there's no guaranteed results?
Well, you have to, I mean, like, I've been doing PR for decades.
Right.
So I can probably get results.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, I would say, I work with a lot of independent art clients and artists and events and whatever. And so then the goal is, like, am I moving the needle?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be able to take somebody from, like, being a nobody to being a superstar, because that's just not realistic. But I can take somebody from being a nobody to being somebody.
Yeah. Okay. Last question. Is it a lucrative career?
Can be. Depends on what you're doing. It depends on, everybody makes their own deals.
Right.
But I've had a good, solid career in PR and have, certainly when I was working for the online gambling company, I was working for a billionaire and I got him on the cover of Forbes. Like, I did really well with that.
Yeah.
Last year was actually my biggest year in terms of billings.
Wow.
Numerically even bigger than that time, but of course with inflation, not quite as big.
You're right.
But I mean, it just really depends. Because I work with such a huge variety of clients, I'm very sensitive to the money supply. Mm-hmm. So when there's piles of money sloshing around, like there was for the last couple of years, I was having a grand old time.
Yeah.
Now I have to say, like, I'm maybe a little concerned about Q4. I'm looking at my thing and going, maybe I should be a little concerned about Q4. But I mean, overall, it's been great. It is not the greatest way to make money in Hollywood, because it's a fee-based thing, as opposed to a lot agents and lawyers and stuff, managers, where it's a percentage thing.
Right.
So, like, people who do, say Will Smith's PR, they get whatever $20,000 a month or $50,000 a month.
After what he did, yeah.
Yeah. But they don't get. That's still going to be less than like a percentage of his pay on a movie or something.
Right.
So it's maybe not as good as some other Hollywood jobs, but it can be.
Yeah,
it can be
lucrative. Okay, last question. Just a tip for those who actually want to pursue a career in being a publicist. What would you tell them?
Really, like, I would say get an internship in PR and see if you like it and see if it's something that you feel like you can be good at.
Okay.
You know, give it a try that way first.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, you're so welcome.
This is so exciting.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.